Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. I am really pleased to be here with you this morning and to address such a distinguished and a knowledgeable audience on the topic peatlands, a new conversation. I have no doubt that if you stick to your topic, and I'm sure you will, that is having a new conversation, you should have a most interesting and rewarding few days. And indeed, that's exactly what I wish for all of you. So to begin with, I'd like to say a few words, not so much about peat and peatlands to begin with, but about sustainable development. And let's see later where peat and peatlands will fit into that scenario. First of all, what is sustainable development? I don't think you can read any document nowadays and find the word development therein without the word sustainable in front of it. We're no longer interested in pursuing development for its own sake. We are only interested in pursuing sustainable development. There are a lot of different definitions of sustainable development, but all of them contain the idea of intergenerational equity. And the one I will use today, and I believe an appropriate one, is the one from the Brundtland Report, Our Common Future. It defines sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That definition contains two key concepts. First of all, the concept of needs, in particular the essential needs of the world's poor. And secondly, the idea of limitations, which are imposed by the progress of technology and social organisation on our environment's ability to meet present and future needs. All the definitions of sustainable development require that we see the world as a system that connects space and a system that connects time. When you think of the world as a system over space, you begin to understand that air pollution in North America affects air quality in Asia. The pesticides sprayed in Argentina could harm fish stocks off the coast of Australia. And when you think of the world as a system over time, you start to realise that decisions taken by our grandparents about how to farm the land continue to affect agricultural practices today, and that the economic policies we now endorse will have an impact on urban poverty on our children's lives. We also understand that quality of life is a system too. For example, it's good to be physically active. But what if you are poor and don't have access to education? It's good to have a secure income. But what if the air in your part of the world is polluted? And it's good to have freedom of religious expression. But what if you can't feed your family? So the concept of sustainable development is rooted in that kind of systems thinking. It helps us to understand ourselves and our world. The problems we face are complex and serious, and we cannot address them in the way we created them. But we can and must address those problems. As I said, sustainable development is concerned with intergenerational equity and is based on the assumption that societies need to manage three types of capital: economic, social, and natural. And indeed, the three core pillars of sustainability are the environment, the economy, and the social. But first of all, let's look at the needs of the present. I suppose the obvious metric by which we can calculate the needs of humanity is the global population. There are about 7 billion people living on this planet, and each and every one of these human beings deserves a sustainable existence. That means adequate food, water, and shelter at the most basic level. Next comes healthcare, then a satisfactory economic and social existence. And after that, for those of us lucky enough to live in the developed world or first world, many of us aspire to having our higher order needs met. That requires a lot of resources. So let's look at these basic needs and how they're being met globally. The $1.25 a day per person threshold for extreme poverty is a standard adopted by the World Bank. And this minimum level of consumption and income level is intended to meet a person's basic needs. That means people who fall under the poverty line, and that is 1/6 of the world's population, or 1.4 billion people, lack the ability to fulfil those basic needs, whether it means eating one bowl of rice per day or foregoing health care when it's needed most. Nearly half of the world's population, more than 3 billion people, live on less than $2.5 a day, and 80% live on less than $10. 1 billion children worldwide are living in poverty. According to UNICEF, 22,000 children die every day due to poverty. Hunger is the #1 cause of death in the world, killing more than HIV, AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis combined. More than 750 million people lack adequate access to clean drinking water. Preventable diseases like diarrhea and pneumonia take the lives of 2 million children a year who are too poor to afford proper treatment. And 1/4 of all humans live without electricity. That's approximately 1.6 billion people. On the basis of those shocking statistics alone, to say that not nearly enough is being done by the worldwide community to fulfil the mission espoused 30 years ago by Gro Harlem Brundtland is the understatement of the century. So, what are the needs of the future? The global population will peak somewhere between 9 and 11 billion. Achieving sustainability is a huge challenge. So the question is, what do we do? While acknowledging that the natural resources of the planet are coming under increasing strain, and the fact that we need to protect our natural capital and the ecosystem services derived therefrom, we still need to maintain economic and social activity. Basically, feed the world, especially the poor. Today, particularly at European level, we are looking to the circular economy to ensure sustainable development. This much vaunted circular economy demands that materials are cycled or recycled ad infinitum if possible. Energy is to be renewable or otherwise sustainable. Ecosystems to be supported by human activity, including rebuilding natural capital. Value is to use resources to generate financial and other value. Health is to support human health and well-being, and society to support a cohesive society and culture. Right now, we are starting on that journey towards this utopia, a journey which, in my view, will be long and difficult and very, very challenging. But we have no option but to start on that journey and to save the planet from environmental catastrophe. But we also have to accept the reality of the nearer term requirement to sustain humanity. So now let us come to the core of today's discussion: peatlands and peat. Marcel tells us that there are 4 million square kilometres of peatland in the world, which is 3% of the land area of the planet. This is estimated to contain 30% of the Earth's terrestrial carbon. About 7% is used for agriculture, 3.5% for forestry. A similar area of tropical peatland has been drained. Excepting the area used by the peat industry, which is approximately 0.1%, the remaining 86% remains intact. And speaking of estimates, it is also reckoned that as much or more peat by volume is accumulating annually around the world than is being extracted industrially. On that basis, can we ask, is peat extraction sustainable on a global level? Marcel said that extraction on degraded peatlands is sustainable. After all, fishing the seas is deemed to be sustainable when it is carried out responsibly and in accordance with agreed protocols. This is based on the fact that consumption is at least balanced by what nature is replenishing. For example, under the new Common Fisheries Policy, we have the concept of MSY, maximum sustainable yield. That is, the largest amount that can be taken from a species stock while allowing the population of fish to continue to be productive indefinitely. Of course, as I said, this must be managed responsibly. And in that context, I note that the peat industry in Europe, together with environmental and other stakeholders, is engaged in a project called Responsible Peat Production. This is aimed at establishing a certification scheme, and that is most certainly to be welcomed and commended. Marcel presented an eloquent case for environmental sustainability when it comes to peatlands and wetlands. But it is also important to remember that sustainable development has three pillars: environmental, economic and social. As a legislator at European level, I have to consider all aspects of development, not just the environmental, crucial and important though that is. Last year, I had the opportunity to visit Finland to see for myself how peat is produced in a responsible and properly managed manner, and then utilised to produce energy through co-fuelling with biomass from the forests. For me, this experience and this knowledge has influenced my views. I saw sustainable peat harvesting and related district heating techniques, and that gave me a more informed view in relation to the use of peat and biomass for energy production. Indeed, in Ireland, we have endless potential to produce biomass, and I'm delighted to hear, and I welcome the announcement yesterday of the new biomass facility in Killala in County Mayo. And staying closer to home, I am well aware of the need to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions in the power generation sector here in Ireland, and that the future of the 3 peat-fuelled power plants in my own Midlands Northwest constituency here in Ireland is crucially dependent on their ability to be co-fired with biomass. If that can be achieved, then the economic use of these assets can be prolonged for the remainder of their respective design lives. This involves utilising industrial peatlands that have already been drained for many years and sustaining much needed employment in an otherwise economically weak area. From where I stand, that agenda, which I understand is being vigorously pursued by Bord na Móna, makes good sense. But I don't hold that opinion in isolation. Reading the Brundtland report, I don't see an essential conflict here. Under the heading Economic Use of Peatlands for Energy Generation, this report deals with a number of issues. First of all, where such peat can be derived from degraded peatlands. Secondly, where it is a necessary part of domestic energy policy. Thirdly, where it increases the efficiency of burning renewables, or where it provides a crucial element in regional development. And it seems to me like we are ticking all of those boxes here in the Midlands. And just before I finish, on a related, though not directly related issue, and Marcel referred to it at the end of his speech, the crucial importance of engaging locals in decision-making and implementation. There must be real participation. We can't have what we sometimes call at European level the illusion of inclusion, the box-ticking exercises where people are asked for their views and then they're ignored. The local skills and practices must be respected and utilised. We must respect and implement the principle of free, informed and prior consent. Those of us here from Ireland will know of the huge levels of anger and resentment that have arisen in recent years over the designation of bogs, etc. Because many people understand that there was not free, informed, and certainly not prior consent. Many people discovered that their bogs were designated after the fact, not before. And that caused a great deal of anger and resentment, much of which is still simmering. So what we need to ensure is that instead of shutting out farmers and landowners from the process, we must involve them in the process. Indeed, the European Commission, and I've spoken to some of the senior officials involved many times, would say that the case against Ireland on its raised bogs, of all the thousands of cases that the European Commission have taken to the Court of Justice over many years, is in the top 3 when it comes to sensitivity. So that tells you how important it is that you engage local people. And Marcel, when speaking of Southeast Asia, also agreed that it is crucial that local landowners and farmers are involved from start to finish in this process. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with a few words from the book entitled The Wise Use of Mire and Peatlands. According to this Wise Use book, the instrument we use to get to wise use is dialogue. And the wisdom of a decision is judged by balancing the pros and cons of the effects of our decisions. I wish you well in your discussions, and I hope you find balance in your dialogue. Thank you.